Okay, can you hear me? I think we're doing good. We had some technical issues, but I hope we can make this happen, and I think we can. Next one. Okay, this is working. Welcome to my talk today, which is called the PHP Developer Stack for Building Chatbots. And during my talk, I want to go with you on a little journey and with you find together these items on my personal stack. So what I think is important when you build chatbots with PHP. And I'm not talking only about some technical skills, only about some information that you need and some learnings you need to do on your way. Okay, so why am I here? Who am I? My name is Christoph Rumpel. I'm a web developer from Vienna, Austria. I work mostly with PHP and Laravel, the Laravel framework. The last 2 years I've been doing quite a lot in the field of chatbots. So I'm building chatbots for myself, for little and big companies. So that's also why I'm talking today about chatbots. From time to time I do talks like here, on other conferences and meetups. I like to give something back, to share some knowledge or experience, especially in the field of chatbots. There's not so many people out there yet that can talk about that, so I like to give a little thing back, and because I also learned a lot going to other conferences and meetups and learn from other speakers and the attendees. If you have any questions, if you want to contact me, you can find me on Twitter. My Twitter handle is Christoph Rumpel, so my name together. I tweet about all the topics that I also talk about, so about PHP, Laravel, chatbots, Chuck Norris jokes, anything like that. And I also have a blog. You can find it on christoph-rumpel.com, and there I also blog about these topics. Okay, but back to this talk. So first I want to start with some chatbot basics. Generally speaking, the first half of my talk will be more about some theories, some examples of the chatbots I have built, to give you some example of what we can do with chatbots. And in the second half, we're doing some live coding together, and I want to show you how to build a little chatbot, if we have enough time. Okay, so what is a chatbot? When you think about it, it's actually just a chat interface. We all know this from all this Messenger, Facebook Messenger, Telegram, WhatsApp, you name it. So we know this chat interface already. And the chatbot is just an application connected to this interface. So when you type something to the interface, this message gets sent to the application, and the application then decides what to do with that. Is this something I know? Should I send back a fallback message, or do I need to call some APIs or other services in order to create the perfect response for this message? But basically it's just the interface and an application. So it's pretty simple. The next slides, I want to give you some examples of the chatbots that I've built, and to introduce you a little bit to the chatbot topics and what we can do with that. So this is can you read it? Not so good, okay. But I will explain it. Here you can see avatar, that's Nela, that's a chatbot. And what Nela does, it helps you to learn more words in English. So for example, in this example here, we are playing the game called Word Chain with Nela. So do you know this game? You played this as a kid in Austria. A person says one word, and another person finds the word another word, starting with the last character of the first word. Okay, perfect. So we're playing this here in the field of countries. So Nela starts with a country. Nela is a chatbot. She says Angola, and now I need to find another word, another country starting with A. And I'm saying here Azerbaijan. And then for every correct answer, you get some points. And if you don't know a country anymore, you can type hint. I think that's what's in here. And then you get a hint from Nela with a hint to the next country, a possible country. And then after all, do we see this here a little bit? After all, we have here then the high score where you see your points, and it's like a little game, and you can compare yourself to others. And it's quite a fun and entertaining way to learn new things, because the best thing when you learn a new language is to speak to someone else. But if there's no one there, maybe the chatbot can help you to make this more personal and more easier. And this was also quite interesting because it was my first chatbot that I've built. It was for Facebook Messenger. And it was actually quite popular because Facebook itself promoted it in other countries. So we didn't notice that, but on the first day we had like 100 users from Austria and Germany, so that's what we expected. Second day, 150, it was okay. And then the next day we had like 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 users coming new each day, and we didn't know where they come from. Because we're just a small company in Austria and Vienna, and we didn't know why so many people knew of this chatbot. And then after some time we found out that Facebook was advertising this chatbot in South Africa, Asia, around many countries, but not in Austria. So we couldn't test it ourselves, but it was quite interesting, and we of course learned a lot. Okay, yeah, here's the high score. Then the next chatbot that I've built was called Tim. It was also from my last company, and it was a very simple chatbot for Facebook Messenger. And what it does, when you go to the Facebook side of this company, you can send a message with the button, and then you can talk to Tim. And what Tim can do, I think you can read it, but I'm just going to explain it. So Tim says, hello, this is the company, it is called Lichtenecker, and I can tell you more about the team members, and that's what's happening here. The user says, I want to get to know the team, and then the chatbot is providing here this gallery with all these team members, and then you can click one of them and get some information about them. So it's a nice and easy way to introduce your company on Facebook itself, on the platform. And it was also a nice example to our customers to show what you can do with a chatbot. So the last chatbot was in the field of education, and this is now more in the fields of customer service or advertising. And what was also nice about that is we connected it to Slack. So we were using Slack in the team, and when the user said, okay, I don't want to talk to the chatbot, I want to talk to a real human, then you could do that, and then the bot is saying here this message. You can't see it, but he says something like, okay, some real human wants to talk to you, please. I'm on a break now, somebody takes over, and I'm going to drink a coffee and come back in 10 minutes or something like that. And then one of the team members can go to Facebook and talk to the human. Then one of my most favorite chatbots I've built is the Laravel Quizbot. It's a Telegram chatbot, not sure we can see it. And it's a quiz for the Laravel PHP framework. So you can type to your Telegram, search for this account, and then you get about 23 questions about the Laravel framework. And you, of course, get some points. There's a high score. You can compete with your others. And it was quite popular because it was a lot of fun just to do such a quiz. Everybody likes to do quizzes, and especially in a big community like in the Laravel community, people played it a lot, and yeah, and it was quite successful. And what's also interesting here is when you use a chatbot, when you use something from Telegram or Messenger, you're kind of already logged in. So we know who the user is. So for this example, we have here the high score. At the end, everybody was #1 because they all played so many times until they questioned all the answers correctly. But we knew the names, so we could put them on the list already without them logging in or registering for this application. But of course, we asked first, do you want to be in the high score? And if they said yes, then we took the name and put it on the list. But this is also a nice example to show that you can build a quiz or a little game inside a chatbot as well. Then also for Laravel, another chatbot that I've built this year for the Laracon EU conference. It's the biggest Laracon conference in Europe. It's about 700 people. And for this conference, I built this chatbot on, I think this is Telegram, but also on Facebook Messenger. And you could ask the chatbot about the conference. I think I have here a video as well. Like now we're typing who will be speaking, and then you get a list of all the speakers, but you could also ask him about when will it be, or where is it located, or you could also subscribe to this chatbot, and then during the conference, the chatbot could send out notifications like, hey, don't miss this talk. And you could actually subscribe to your favorite talks of the conference, and then 5 minutes before the start, the chatbot will say, hey, don't miss this nice talk by Hannes, for example, in 5 minutes on stage number 2. And here what's different is from the other chatbots, you can see that the user is typing a lot of questions themselves, so we don't provide them too many possibilities like buttons or galleries like before. And now it gets much more difficult to understand what the user wants, because when he says who will be speaking, we need to find out that it's about speakers and that we need to load this information. And a little bit later, we'll show how we can handle that inside a chatbot. And one last example I've got is this chatbot here. You can see it here. It's a chatbot for a website. So this is quite different from the other chatbots, because normally when we think of chatbots for messengers, but you can also provide them in native apps or websites, of course. And this was a super cool project for a company called Wiener Städtische, which is the biggest insurance company in Austria. And there we built this chatbot that pops up about just a few seconds after you visit the site. And then the bot says, hey, I'm the chatbot, I can help you with this, this, and this. And if you want, I can help you navigate through the site. And this is something that's quite interesting, because on these big company sites, there's so much information and it's difficult to find the one thing you need. And mostly you come to the visit to you just need this piece of information. And a chatbot can help you with that. This is an example from the mobile version, so we're still on the website here. And the chatbot pops up and the user says, I want to make an appointment. And then the chatbot says, okay, let's do an appointment. Do you already have a consultant? Should we pick a specific one, or can I provide you with one? What's your name? What's the subject? And all this information gets then stored in the background, and we then send it to the customer service. And then someone from there could call the user and say, hey, okay, I know you want this, this, and this, and now I can help you with the appointment. And this helps the customer service a lot, because normally a lot of people would just mail them or phone them, and this costs the company a lot of money. And with a chatbot, you can help to reduce these payloads. And one thing that's interesting is when you build a chatbot on a website is, now you don't have the chat interface. You have to build it yourself, because on Facebook you already have it. On WhatsApp you already have it. But on a website you need to build this thing yourself. And it's a lot of work, because we use these messengers every day and they all work really well. And to build something like that is quite challenging, because if the UX is not right, you will feel it immediately. And it is a pain for the user. But on the other side, you're able to build what you want. So you can brand it like a company. You can add here some buttons, so that's what we built, for some main functionality. And we also added a date picker here. So that's really difficult to do in Facebook Messenger, for example. But now that we built this ourselves, we can decide what we want and we can build it inside our chatbot. And that's what I find really cool about this project. Okay, why did Chatbot become actually so popular? So there are quite a few reasons for this. One of them is people change how they behave with communication. Back some years ago, we've used the Facebook platform a lot to share something on our timeline there and contact other people there. But nowadays, or since late 2015, people are using the messengers more than the actually platforms. So we're using more Facebook Messenger than the Facebook platform, more WhatsApp than Instagram or other stuff. But this is a change in how people communicate with each other, and this is also interesting for companies. And now we have like so many users using these messengers. We have Facebook Messenger and WhatsApp with 1.3 billion monthly active users. So it's monthly active user, and that's a lot. WeChat, we have about 900, speak in Asia, Skype about 300, and Telegram about 100. And this is huge numbers, and so many people use it, and of course, brand services, companies want to be there as well. And then with chatbots, we also have quite some benefits when we think about what they can do and how they can help us. So the applications, they work automatically, so they work 24/7, and therefore you can reduce the costs. It's something that companies are interested in, as you can imagine. Then, if the chatbot is good, you can use your natural language to talk to the chatbot. And of course, our natural language is the most natural way for us to communicate, because we talk to our friends, to our family like that. And we don't have to use just keywords when we Google something. So this is something that is or could be a big benefit. Then, as I mentioned, be where your users are. Everybody wants to be where the users are, because there you have the people, there you can make money, there you can reach a lot of users. Then also interesting, comparing with apps, you don't have to install a chatbot. It's already on the website, or it's just a contact you add to your messenger. So you just search for it and add it, and that's it. You don't need any memory on your phone, and you can save it all for your photos or videos or what you do. And then very interesting, my opinion is this here relationship. Because we're used to talk, especially in messengers, in a one-on-one conversation with friends and family. And now we can talk to chatbots there as well. So this is a good chance to build up a good relationship to your users. And that's especially interesting for companies as well. On the other side, if you screw this up, you screw up the relationship very, very easily. And at the end, if you're allowed, only of course you can use the history, the messages that you have already written, or that the user have already written, can use this to provide a better user experience the next time and to provide better products for a shop, for example, inside a chatbot. In the end, I would say there are two main use cases for users chatbots. First, you want to reach people that you usually couldn't. That's especially true for younger people that are not on the big platforms anymore, but they are on messengers, and you can reach them there very easily. That's especially true for Kik, for example. That's a messenger that a lot of young people use. And on the other hand, it's good when you want to use a better interface for your need. So the chat interface is a conversational interface where you have to talk to the user, and it's quite different from a website. A website is like, here's everything I have, try to find the one information you need. And a chatbot is like, tell me what you want, and if it works, then I can provide you directly with this information. Okay, so number one on our stack, it's a little bit cheesy, but chatbot basics. I think they're very important when you start with chatbots. I know many developers that start and they don't know what to build with a chatbot. They just build it for the reason to be a chatbot, and this will fail in the end. But I think now you know the chatbot basics and you can start. Okay, what about a programming language? There's a PHP conference. In my talk, I said something about PHP, so it's probably sure that I'm going to use PHP, but about 2 years ago when I started building chatbots, this wasn't clear. Facebook documentation is still everything about Node.js. So 2 years ago, there were like no tutorials on how to build a chatbot in PHP. And I was a new developer, and I thought, okay, maybe I should use Node.js. Maybe that's the thing you need to build a chatbot. And I tried it out, and it worked after some time, but of course learning a new language is quite difficult. And just for building a chatbot, it would be maybe overload. So I tried it out with PHP, and actually it worked as well. Because when I think about how messengers work, they all need some kind of account, so that's pretty easy. Then they all have HTTP-based APIs, so that's pretty simple. And then, of course, they have platform-specific features. So Facebook features are different from the features on Telegram and so on. So this is, for example, you can read it again, but these are 2 curl requests sent from my terminal, where I just have some JSON data with a chat ID and some text, and I send it to a specific API endpoint. Here we have Telegram, and on the top we have Facebook, and you provide some tokens in there. So it's pretty simple. And this way, when you send this, you have a new message in your Facebook Messenger chat or Telegram chat. And this is the same example, just in a REST client. Okay, so for me it was then pretty clear we can use PHP, because PHP can send HTTP requests. That's pretty easy. Thumbs up, yeah, we're finally there. Then messengers don't care. They have the API, use whatever you want. Okay, that's good. Then for me personally, I think PHP is great again. Especially in the last years, we have seen some great improvements, and it makes more fun again to program in PHP. But in the end, I would say use a language you already know. If you do PHP, use PHP. If you do Node.js, use Node.js. If you do Python, do Python. So that's valid, of course, because as I mentioned, you don't need to learn a new language. Just use the one you need. Of course, there are some situations where maybe a chatbot in this language would make a better fit for a specific project, but generally speaking, use what you already know. Okay, that's number 2. PHP, bam. All right. Then what about PHP framework? So the first time that I've built a chatbot, I thought it was quite different from all the other applications that I've built before. So I thought maybe I don't need a framework, or maybe it doesn't fit my needs. So the chatbot looks quite different. But actually, when we take a closer look, the possible requirements are quite similar. We need databases to store some users or subscribers. We need to do some caching. That's especially true when you want to store the conversation info. Also, when you build chatbots, you save the state of a conversation in the cache. So you knew that the last message was about this, and the next message will be something like that. We will talk about that later as well. Then routing, of course, and maybe authentication. So I think that looks like a pretty normal PHP application, and this is all something where a framework could help you. Bam, PHP framework. I first thought about putting Laravel there, but of course you can use whatever you want. I choose Laravel, but it doesn't matter which PHP framework you use. Okay, and now finally it's about chatbot framework. So it now gets a little bit more interesting. Not that it wasn't interesting before, but at least I hope so. And you're lucky there because there's just one really good PHP framework out there. It's called Botman. You can find it on botman.io. And it's really cool because you can use almost one code base to support multiple messengers. So this means every messenger is different in the objects that you need to send to them. The endpoints are different. They require a token. But all of this will Botman take care for you, and you can write your code, and it almost works for all messengers. It has a very expressive syntax, easy to read, good to understand, and a lot of stars on GitHub. It's by the way from Marcel Pozio. Not sure if you know it. He's quite active in the PHP community. Has a lot of packages, and also a nice guy. Okay, are you ready for some live coding? I want to show you a little bit about Botman itself, the syntax, the drivers, conversations, and maybe testing if we find some time. And live coding is always fun because I will screw it up, you're going to laugh, I'm going to panic, you laugh even more, and it goes on like this. So I'm the only one who feels the pain, but I'm okay with that. Okay, here we go. So, okay, this is better to read. A little bit big, but I think it will work. So I have here a so-called Botman Studio application. And it's a Botman library inside a Laravel application already. You can download this very easily. Of course, you can use Botman with any PHP framework. So, but this is the Laravel application, and if you know Laravel, this will look quite familiar to you. And this Botman Studio comes with some predefined features that we can use out of the box. So first, if we check out this website, we get here this nice little Botman welcome screen with some information. Okay, but also we have in our main route file, so you can find this under routes web. So we're here already. We are routing all get and post requests to Botman to the Botman controller. And when you work with a chatbot, you have to provide this hook, and you gave it to Facebook and to Telegram. So when there's a new message in the chat, Telegram will send this to this endpoint. And then we can handle it and process it and return something back. So it all starts here in our route file, and then we're going to the Botman controller. So this means this already comes with the Botman controller. If I can Yeah, here we are. And here we are calling the handle method. And here, service container action. Thank you, Hannes. Now we know what this does. We are grabbing the Botman instance from the service container, and then we're running the listen method on it. So it's like that. Facebook, there's a new message. The user sends a new message to Facebook. It gets sent to our application, to our router, then to our controller, and here we're running the listen method on it. And the listen method is checking, okay, what is this request? Is it from Facebook? Is it from Telegram? And then it will also check, is this drive already installed? Or do I need to install it? And if there are Botman routes available for this. And I will show you this now. You can find it under routes Botman. And here we create so-called listeners. So that's pretty basic. We are listening for a message hi. And when we have this message, then we'll run this callback here, where we're going to reply to the user with hello. So that's pretty simple. We can already test it. I have set up here a Facebook Messenger account, conversation with this bot, and on Telegram. And when I type hi, we should get hello back. So this works. And on Facebook, it is the same. Hopefully. Yeah. With Facebook, it's always difficult, yeah. Okay, let's just change this to make sure that I'm not telling any bullshit. I'm adding here an emoji. And we should get that back here as well. Yeah, of course. Okay, so this is how you work with this framework. You create listeners, so let's create another one. So maybe the user says something like, hey, and now I'm replying just with, hey you, and maybe let's do another message as well. And it's always so hard to code while all the others are looking at you. Okay. Try this out again. And yeah, so we get now 2 messages, so this is working as well. Okay, so this is pretty simple. We're listening for some strings and then return some strings. Okay, that works fine, but what about really conversations? So that's where it gets interesting. And in Botman we have conversation classes where we group together a bunch of questions from the user, and at the end we get a kind of result that we can use. So for example, in Botman Studio there is an example conversation under app HTTP. No, here it is. Conversations, example conversation. And no, wait, let's try it out first and then we'll check out the code. So inside our route file we have here this listener for start conversation. And then we're calling here the Botman controller with the start conversation method. It's also something that Hannes has shown us before. So we can see that here in our controller now as well. And here we are calling the start conversation method on the Botman instance with our specific example conversation. Okay, so what does that do? So as mentioned, this comes by default with Botman Studio, and you get ask a question. Hey, you woke me up. What do you need? What do you want? Joke or a quote? Anyone? Joke? Okay, let's go with joke. Let's see what we get. Behind every successful man, there is a woman, and behind every dead man, there's Chuck Norris. Typical Chuck Norris joke. Okay, so this is working. And of course here on Telegram, by the way, I'm using the web clients for these services, obviously. And as you can see here, the buttons look a little bit different, and yeah, that's because every messenger looks different. So now we go for the fancy quote. Well begun is half done. Yeah, also nice. Okay, so this is working as well. Okay, let's create our own conversation to make this more clear how you can use this. Let's say we want to build a little chatbot to the user wants to know about conferences, and we tell him, okay, in this country we have this conference, in this country we have this conference. A simple example. Okay, and we're using the artisan command tool, which is the command tool by Laravel, to create a new conversation class. Here I have it already. Botman make conversation. We call it conferences conversation. Okay. Here we go. This is now under HTTP conversations, conferences conversation. And it's just some boilerplate with the run method. And the run method is also only is what's getting start first. So this is run automatically. Okay, so what we want to do? We want to first show the user some buttons to maybe, let's say, pick a specific country. So what country do you want to look for conferences? And then we provide him with some buttons to check that. Okay, I first want to keep it a little bit clearer and make my own method. Let's call it ask about country. A little bit of wishful development. And then we create this method here, and then I'm now creating a new question object. And this is something that comes with Botman. It's this one, and we can create with this static method here a new question object, and this will be the question that you will see. So let's say, please choose a country. And now we are attaching some buttons. So I'm providing here this array, and now in there I'm going to use another method from Botman for a button instance. And this is now the text of the button. Let's provide Austria, and we also give it a value. The value is what you then get back as a response. And let's just keep it lowercase Austria. And let's copy that, and let's take Ukraine as well, and also the value in lowercase. All right, okay, now we got our question object, and now we can use a method called ask from Botman to send this question to the user. So we're providing here the question as the first parameter, and we have a callback as the second argument with an answer object. So this will hold our answer. I need to spell it correctly. Yeah, here we go. And okay, here we go. So this callback will be called when we get the response back from the user. So the user clicks one of the buttons, Austria, Ukraine, and then we get this answer object back. And here, let's just quickly check the value of this answer. So we can do this with getValue. And then let's just say if it's Ukraine, then we want to show some conferences in Ukraine. Let's call another method here, show Ukraine conferences. And let's just create that here. And then we're just replying with the same method. And let's just say CODEiD is the best conference in the Ukraine. Of course, right? Yeah, okay. And we're adding some emojis because I'm a big emoji fan. And I think I'm fine with that. Okay, so let's recap. Inside our Botman route file, we now need to create a trigger for this conversation. So let's just copy this here. And now we're listening for, let's say, conference. And then instead of replying, we are now starting here our conversation. It's not this, it's here bot. Start conversation. Here we putting in the instance of our conference conversation. Like this. Okay, so the user types conference, we're starting the conversation. In the run method gets called automatically. We are asking about the country, we're creating this object here, then asking it, and if we get a value back, we check if it's Ukraine, and then we show this message down here. Okay, let's try it out. Let's do it first on Telegram. Okay, nice, we get this here. Let's say Ukraine. And yeah, CODEiD is the best conference in Ukraine. Perfect. Let's also try it out in Facebook Messenger. I need to spell it correctly to make it work. Okay, perfect. So this is working as well. And that's also what I meant with one code base. So for example, we have here this listener, and we don't say, check if it's Facebook or check if it's Telegram. Botman knows how to respond to these services to make this possible. How much time do I got? 5 minutes? Oh my god. Okay. I guess we really don't have time for questions. Okay, I'm pretty slow today. Okay, no problem. Just shortly want to show you some examples how you can test these conversations. So inside we have an example test already in Botman Studio. And here in the first test we are saying when the bot receives hi, these are some assertions that we can use from Botman, then we assert a reply of hello. Okay, let's try that out. PHP unit test, okay, we get an error because we changed our string here. Let's change that back. It's this emoji, let's get rid of that. And now the tests work fine. And as another example, here we have a test for the example conversation that we've seen, where we have the quotes, and we say that if we receive the start conversation string, then we assert a question object with this text here, and we assert a button was clicked, that's what interactive message means here, with this value, and then we assert that the reply is inside these quotes. And this is how you can test longer conversations, because as you can imagine, this conversation can get quite long. Okay, back here. So next in our stack is Botman, obviously because it's really the best PHP chatbot framework out there. I'm also helping myself, so that's also why it's cool. And you should definitely check it out if you're interested in that. And last, we also need to talk about natural language processing services. I hope it's okay we do the talk a little bit longer and then have less time for the questions. Is this okay? Okay, thanks. Because I wanted to show you this as well. So NLP stands for natural language processing. And it is about how to program a computer to understand natural language, naturally human language. That's not something that I want to talk about because I don't know about how to do this. But there are natural language processing services that you can use as a service to understand messages. So we have seen these kind of listeners where we're listening for specific strings and then we reply with something. But here the user says, hey you. What about he says just hey or hi? Then we would end up with so many listeners and it's impossible to provide all these different occasions and situations how you can use them. So, but when we look at this, there's something that's same. And what's same is the intent. So the user wants to greet us, to welcome us, to say hey to us. So if we would know the intent of the message, it doesn't care the exact strings. But with the intent, we can always reply with hello, and it would make a good fit. And that's something that I want to show you in another quick example with a service called Dialogflow. So here we go. So this is Dialogflow. I have already created here an account. It's free, so you can use it here for free. And there are lots of things that you can do, but we're interested in the intents. So we are creating a new intent, and we want to match when the user asks about our conference. So when we know the user asks about conferences, we know that we can show him our conversation for conferences. So let's just call it conference. Save this. Okay, and now here under training phrases, we can provide examples of what the user might say in order to get to know about the conferences. So what would he might say? Maybe, please show me some conferences. Or provide me with a list of fancy conferences. Or maybe he's rude and he says, conferences, now, give it to me. Okay, and here you can provide as many examples as you want, and of course, the more examples you have, the better it works. And now when I save this, in the background, the service is using machine learning to tell our, its so-called Dialogflow agent, what this conference intent means. Okay, and here down there it says training completed. Okay, now we can test it. So let's say I am interested in conferences. So this is different from the example that we have provided, but it should still match the conference intent. And it does, that's what we see here. So that's pretty cool. With just 3 examples, we have now much more possibilities that the user can see, and we will still recognize it as our conference intent. To make this work with Botman, we also need this action here, and let's just call it action conference. And this is just like an ID for this intent. Let's just save this again. Now you can see this icon spinning, so this means he's training in the background. And it normally takes just a few seconds. Okay, we're ready. Now test it again. Show me conferences. And now next to the intent, we should also get the action name here. Okay, this also works. Okay, back in our application. I just need to switch to a new stage. Welcome to stage number 2. You officially made it. Congrats. And what I have provided here is already the Dialogflow instance, which we add as a middleware to our Botman file, to our Botman instance. So it works like that. We are adding it to the received middleware. So every incoming message from Facebook to our Botman application is then sent to Dialogflow first. There it gets analyzed, and then we get the message back. And in there, we can check now the intent, if it was matched. Okay, 5 minutes to go. I'm going to hurry up. And down here, we have now a listener where we can listen for the intent action name. And what was it? It was action conference. Let's just edit there. So if the message comes back from Dialogflow with the matched intent, we can now listen like that for this. And now here we want to start our conversation again. And what was it called? New conference conversation. Okay. So let's try this out on Facebook. And let's type, please show me some new fancy super duper conferences. And with a little bit of luck, it should still work and trigger our conversation. And it does. Now we say Ukraine. And here I've also provided for Facebook a gallery template that you can use with this nice image. Let's switch to another one, yeah. With all the speakers for today. And you can click on them and then get more information. And this is how you can build up your chatbot to provide more information. And with Facebook especially, you can use these cool templates, and that's quite nice. Okay, so last in our stack is now Dialogflow. It's a super easy to use and free to use natural language processing service, so please use this. And I will share some resources. I will tweet the slides, and they will also be on speaker deck and on my website. And at the end, some shameless, sorry. Do you want to make a picture? Okay, thanks. And some shameless advertising at the end. I've written a book about building chatbots with PHP. It's about 200 pages, an ebook where I tell you everything you need to know to build chatbots with PHP. And I've also created a video course, if you mod a video type. And in there we'll also show how I created the Laracon EU conference chatbot. Thank you. Do we have time for questions? Sorry.
Hello.
Hello.
Recently I published a Telegram bot, and this bot store many personal info about user. If I store info like country, full address, full name, what I have to avoid problem with law.
Yeah. So when I started building chatbots, we just saved everything we got. So for Facebook, for example, you get the name, you get the country, you get the gender, and lots of really sensitive data. But nowadays, you can't just store them. So what we do is we asked the user if it's okay if you use this feature, like for example, subscription feature. For this, we need to store the name and the ID of the user. And we tell the user, okay, if you want to use this notification system, then we need to store it. And if the user then agrees, then it's allowed. So you change it from we are saving everything to we save nothing and ask the user for everything you need. But it depends on the service, of course. If you're providing a service where you sell products, for example, and you need to send them out, then I think it's by law already allowed to store the address, for example, because without the address you can send the product. But I think this is then specific to the law and to the product, but this is how I would handle this. Also with my new chatbots, I always also have a section for the private policy, so you can check your stored data. It's for Facebook, there's a menu that you can use on chatbots, and there is a menu button with my stored data, and then I will show what data I've stored for the user, and you can also click and delete it. So then the user can delete it as well. So that's very important these times.
Yet question.
What's this?
Okay. Yes, yet question. This was my 5 chatbot, and I don't know one answer for the next questions. How to advertise and monetize chatbots?
Oh yeah, that's a really good one. Yeah. Monetizing, yeah. So I do quite a lot of chatbots projects, but it's very difficult to find companies interesting in it and spend a lot of time, because they think you can build a chatbot and then everything works and you can leave it alone, but it doesn't work like that. You have to check every time what is working, what is not working. You have spent more time for maintenance, and you have to improve it every week, because it's still something new. You need to check if every intent was matched, for example, and things like that. You need to do a lot of logging, so it will take a lot of time, and most companies don't want to spend this much time. So this is why it's quite different to monetize chatbot these days when you think about finding companies to build a chatbot for. It's still difficult for me, so I don't do only chatbots, because it will be difficult, because there are still not so many companies interested in do so, but it's still possible, and I think it's important to know the field where you do a chatbot. So I think something with the education field, with the language helper we built with Nela, it's quite a good example, but there are a lot of examples that just don't work. And you see them, see companies get rid of their chatbots very easily because they just didn't work, and not every situation it's better than the solution you had before.
And last question.
Yep.
On your opinion, what is the best platform to develop chatbots? Telegram, Facebook Messenger, or sorry God, Skype? And the best platform to host chatbots?
Yeah, so Facebook is really cool because of the nice templates you can use, but besides that, it's a pain in the ass. There are so many errors you get. They have now a really strict review process, especially since the leaks they had some month ago. So it's really annoying, because you build your chatbot and it's ready, then you need to go through the review process, and I think there are 2 or 3 processes you need to do, and then it can take up to 3 or 4 weeks till your bot is live or not. And so Facebook is not so fun. I would recommend starting with Telegram, because it's super easy. You create a token with a chatbot. So Telegram has a chatbot to create chatbots. So that's really nice. And you just need the token, enter it to your Botman application, and you can start. And with other services, it's quite more you need to do to set this up. So I would go for Telegram.
What is the best platform to host?
Since it's just a PHP application, whatever you prefer, I use Laravel Forge, because I use it for all my Laravel application, but I would say it doesn't matter, in my opinion.
No, Heroku shared hosting is the worst variant, as I understand. Yes.
Heroku?
No, Heroku.
Yeah. Don't use shared hosting. No. Never, please.
And Heroku, you know about Heroku?
I just know the name. I haven't used it, so I don't know if it's good or not. So.
Thanks.
Thank you for your speech. It was very exciting, and I think you have a lot of experience. And I want to ask you about your stages of development. So, when I think about develop chatbots, I don't develop any chatbots, but after your conference, I think about
maybe start.
Maybe start, yes. And you have some feature in your bots, like say 1 minute. People can ask questions in different types and get answer about it. And when you do. What features you do have, etc.
So what you can use is depending on the messenger, for example.
When I develop some application, I develop it. First, get an idea, then develop it, test it, and go to prod. And I think when you develop it, you also, after go to some beta testing or prod, you get some sentences from users, what they write, different types of sentences, and go to the get the sentences, log it, and put it on this some service you show. And it's wonderful. It's great.
Yeah.
So
because you learn from your users with every new message you get. Yeah.
So I wonder what features you do you use in your services also.
So like tools to handle.
What features? Okay.
So I don't have any specific tools. It depends on the company. So like for Wiener Städtische, the big Austrian company, they have the whole system, and I'm just sending an API request with a summary of the conversation to them, and then they handle it. And I'm not sure if they have any tools or how they store this kind of information, but this depends on every project, I would say. I don't have any specific tool that I would say. When you build for Facebook Messenger, it's quite nice because you have all the messages in the chat itself. You can just look them up because technically you're not allowed to store them or lock them by law. So with Facebook, it's quite easy because they have some special. For them it's special because they can store it somehow, and you can just read them up. So that's nice with Facebook. But with other services, like for the website, I don't have access to those information unless the company gives them to me. Okay. I hope this answered your question halfway. A
little bit.
A little bit.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for your presentation. I have a question about when you have connection with bot. It's good. It's you can send any messages for him. But I have some problem when user not started connection with you, but the bot need send for some information.
Yeah.
Does it make sense?
Yeah.
And what your tricks for solve this problem?
So this also depends on the messaging service, but normally it's like that. The user comes to your bot or to the page of the bot and then starts the conversation. And from that time, you know that this user exists, you can have the chat ID, you can store it, and you need that in order to reply to the user. If the user hasn't talked to you, then you don't know about the ID and you can send out messages. In most cases, it's also a good thing because then companies would just send out messages to everyone, and we don't want to do that. But there are other things, like I think for Facebook Messenger, it's possible to get these IDs from from people that likes your page or something like this. And for Telegram, it's also possible in some way, but I haven't tried it. And I wouldn't recommend do so. So I think it's a good idea to let the user start the conversation. Then you can ask him about sending him some stuff, and I think it's a better approach.
Thank you for your talk.
Welcome.
For example, if you need to make some, before answering to the user, you need to make some third-party API call, for example, like Google Translate, to translate some text, or just execute some heavy operation. Is there any way to optimize it somehow, just showing a preloader for the user? Or what is a common approach like to signalize a delay?
So you mean when we use different services to analyze the message, detect what you want? I wouldn't say I have a specific approach to that. So in my case, I haven't used Google Translate, or I didn't have to build a chatbot for different languages yet. So I think if I would do that, then I would know about some things you can do. But typically, it's like a PHP application. You have an incoming request. You need to think about how you can handle this, which service you need to lean on, which service you need to use. You need to check the performance. Does it take too long to send it back? Maybe you can then send the user, okay, I got this information. It will take about a minute, and then I will reply you back. And then when the other service is finished with some other stuff in the background, then you can send this to the user. And this is how you can handle when there are some, and you need to do some stuff that takes a little bit longer, for example. But don't have specific example or how you can do so with.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Спасибо.
Я постараюсь быстренько. What are possible ways to handle input typos? I mean, for example, user made a mistake in a word conference. Will NLP library handle this case, and will it provide any suggestions, or this requires additional training?
Yeah. So with natural language processing service like Dialogflow, they can still understand the intent with some errors in the sentence, so that's possible. There are also services out there for PHP and other languages, some packages that check the sentence, and then you get, did you mean this or that? So you can do that as well. And I think it depends on how you want to handle this. But I think mostly it's good with a service that already understands this and then can still reply to the sentence, even if there are errors in it.
Thanks for speech. When your users wants to leave some feedbacks about your bots or some report a problem, what methods do you usually use for receive these feedbacks from your customers?
Yeah, so this is also quite different from every project. I would say every chatbot project that I've built was really different from the other ones because there were other people involved, other systems, other messengers, for example. What I normally like to do is to provide in the chatbot a functionality to provide feedback. So for example, for Facebook messengers, you have in the chat a menu item at the button, and there you have some buttons you can click, and one of them I like to put send feedback so that the user can send feedback. There are some messengers like Facebook also have some rating systems, so where you can rate a chatbot and then you get this feedback also over Facebook. So this is also interesting. But I then mostly store them in the database or log them or send it to a customer service. So it's different from every project. But generally speaking, I would want to get the feedback and I would want to save it somewhere. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I like this guy. 3 questions, yeah, it was nice. Thank you. Спасибо.